What is SOG? Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group was a highly classified, multi-service United States Special Operations Unit which conducted covert unconventional warfare operations prior to and during the Vietnam War. Established on 24 January 1964, the unit conducted strategic reconnaissance missions in the Republic of Vietnam, South Vietnam, the Democratic Republic of Vietnam, North Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Carried out the capture of enemy prisoners, rescued downed pilots, conducted rescue operations to retrieve prisoners of war throughout Southeast Asia, and conducted clandestine agent team activities and psychological operations. I am your host, Bruce Christensen. The history of SOG tells the stories of those who have fought valiantly to protect the liberty we hold most dear. The history of SOG has preserved and honors the legendary feats of our SOG soldiers. The history of SOG provides military history to today's soldiers, veterans of all conflicts, their families, and to the public at large. Our mission is to educate, inspire and engage our communities now and for generations to come. I have embarked on an adventure of epic proportion. I have designed a new website, the History of Military Assistance Command Vietnam Studies and Observations Group. Within the contents of the site, I have documented all aspects of SOG from 1964 to 1972, including overall history of SOG, SOG chiefs, bases, mission, teams, virtual museum, individual stories, pictures, videos and so much more. There is also a store to promote SOG authors, books, and other SOG-related items. www.sogsite.com. My father Paul Christensen was assigned to SOG. Although he never talked about it, I did see his pictures and plaques. I knew he was a Green Beret, but not until my 30s did I find out what SOG was all about. The website, blogs and videos are dedicated to all the SOG warriors and the supporting units, such as the air assets, maritime operations, MACV forces and all of the indigenous troops assigned to SOG. One such warrior is Jim Bolen. The Jim Bolen SOG Interviews, Part 1, Secret Missions into Laos and Cambodia during the Vietnam War. Jim Bolen is a former Special Forces operative who went into Laos and Cambodia on dangerous and top-secret SOG operations to the Ho Chi Minh Trails during the Vietnam War. He was a recon team leader and went on over 40 SOG missions, being extracted under fire from over 30 of them. The highly decorated soldier, Jim has also written a remarkable account of his life, before, during, and after his time in Vietnam in his book No Guts, No Glory, sold on Amazon. Jim was interviewed by Peter Allen Lloyd.
Jim, what was life like living at Ban My Thuot, South Vietnam, where you were based for much of your time in SOG?
I had no problem being at Ban My Thuot living in Tent City. I love camping, so it was almost like a big camp out. There were 6 Americans living in each tent. We each had our little section of the tent, divided as we liked. The latrines and showers were not the best, but overall it was not bad. We were there in the tents during the rainy season, so that was not the best. What does one expect? We are in a war zone.
Can you describe where in Laos and Cambodia you went on your SOG missions?
Unfortunately, I can't be too precise, because when I was given a mission the only part of the map I ever saw was of my area of responsibility. I never saw the whole map, just a small portion which was mine, so I have no idea if we were close to any small towns or villages. We received daily intelligence reports up to the day of infiltration which would show enemy movement or bivouac sites along the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos and Cambodia. We usually had some idea of high-speed jungle trails and sometime roads in the vicinity, and that was often the reason we were going in, to identify enemy movement, ease of movement and capabilities on these trails. Other teams would get the adjoining areas and OP-35, SOG headquarters, and the CIA would put this together like a puzzle to get an overall idea of what was going on. The CIA was looking for troop movement, plus they wanted to know about vehicles, weapons being carried, condition of the enemy uniforms, and attitude in general of the enemy, anything that would help us defeat the NVA. A couple of my missions were into the Fish Hook area in Cambodia and a few into the tri-border region where the borders of Laos, Cambodia and Vietnam all meet, but most were in the central border area of Cambodia. Soon after I got into country, I was moved from FOB-2, Kon which had responsibility for the tri-border area, to FOB-5 and Ban Mi Thuot, which worked the central part of Cambodia's border area. Your FOB, forward operating base, is what determined the areas of responsibility.
What made the Fish Hook area of Cambodia so dangerous for SOG teams?
From what I heard, there were at least 2 NVA regiments strongly entrenched in that area with heavy anti-aircraft weapons, and they were very well organized. We had team members' ankles getting grabbed by NVA from disclosed, well-fortified and camouflaged bunkers as they were getting off the choppers. It was just not a very friendly area.
Can you describe what you would do the night before a mission?
First, a few days before a mission I would stop showering and using deodorant. It is amazing how unnatural odors travel in the jungle. I would also wear and sleep in the uniform that I would be wearing in the field during this time. The night before a mission I would check my mountain yards to make sure they were prepared. After that I would go over infiltration procedures with my other American and make sure we were both on the same page. We'd check our equipment one last time and then try to get some sleep, which was usually hard to do. We were usually up early as we tried to insert as close to dawn as possible.
Did you have a favorite weapon that you took on every mission?
Certain missions required that we carry specific weapons. Whenever we did have a choice, I always chose the CAR-15. That, to me, is the finest weapon made. I think that I have killed people with every type of weapon that was available at that time, and none were as good as the CAR-15.
Did you take anything else with you on missions, other than weapons and food?
While preparing to go on my first recon mission in Vietnam, early in the morning I was nervously sitting in the mess tent having breakfast. My gear was packed, and we were departing in an hour. I had a plastic spoon to eat my indigenous rice with in the field. I don't like using plastic, so I was looking at the spoon I was using. I stuck that spoon in my pocket. There were no US markings on it, and I took it with me on my first mission. I made it out alive, and in my mind, that spoon became my good luck item. I carried it on over 40 top secret missions out of Vietnam. Later in my life, when I went to Africa, I carried it on every mission in the bush. Anything I did that had a certain amount of danger, I carried that spoon. I have never washed it in 46 years. I am looking at it now. I thought of having it melted down into a ring, but I never have.
How long would the typical helicopter flight be to your LZ in Laos or Cambodia from your base?
That obviously depended on where we launched from. I would say flight times ranged from 1 to 3 hours. Sometime we would spend the night at an American compound that was closer to the border area, where we were going to be infiltrated. It was funny, because they kept us secluded from the Americans and we weren't allowed to have any contact with them. The Americans at the launch compound always wondered what the hell was going on.
Why the need for secrecy from other Americans?
At that time our government said we had no Americans on the ground in Cambodia or Laos. We did not want people writing home about what we were doing.
What kind of air support did you have when you went into Laos and Cambodia?
Again, we were supported by the 20th Air Force Squadron known as the Green Hornets. When we were inserted by chopper, we were always escorted by 4 helicopter gunships flying cover, just in case the team was hit on insertion. There was always a FAC flying high above guiding the insert chopper to the LZ. The insert chopper would be flying at treetop level for their protection. The chopper flying at treetop would not allow the NVA to respond fast enough to fire on them. That is why the FAC had to guide them in. Many times I would be standing on the strut of the chopper at that time and have treetops hitting my legs. The cover choppers were needed to protect the insert team in case of attack during infiltration. It is amazing the amount of firepower the cover choppers can put down. I cannot begin to tell you how many times the Air Force gunship saved my butt. We also had a forward air controller who flew a Cessna Skymaster, which was a twin push-pull engine aircraft, and he would guide us into the LZ. The reason we had the helicopter gunships was because SOG teams were sometimes attacked on insertion, because the NVA knew the only way in for us was by using landing zones, LZs, coming in by chopper, so any good LZ was always watched if the NVA had the personnel.
Were you ever ambushed on insertion?
With almost 50 missions, I only remember one time that we were shot out of a LZ during insertion. We were fired on during the insertion, before we were on the ground. It seemed to be only one NVA, probably a LZ watcher that got spooked. It was enough to cause us to abort the LZ and go to the secondary LZ.
How did you select your landing zones?
The LZ was always picked out by the team leader about a week or so before actual infiltration. This was done with the fact during a flyover of the area with our map. We would have to fly high enough not to give any warning to the NVA of a possible insertion, so sometimes the LZ up close during insertion was not nearly as good as we would have liked when we originally saw it a few thousand feet in the air through binoculars. Once you had your primary LZ picked out, you then looked for a secondary LZ in case the first one was compromised. The second LZ was on the other side of your area of responsibility, hopefully far away from the enemy you just encountered. The bad thing about having to use your second LZ was the NVA knew you were trying to get into their area and go on alert, which made the mission much more dangerous.
Were the gunships ever needed?
Not during infiltration for my team, luckily, but definitely on extraction. I came out 39 times under fire. Many times as I got on the chopper, I would see the pilots taking rounds through their windshield. That is why I said in my book how brave these guys that supported us were. The men in the choppers were sitting ducks, but they always came in to get us anyway. One of our worries were the NVA would use us for bait just to bring the choppers in so they could destroy as many as possible. The NVA knew that the choppers would keep coming in for us as long as we were alive. We were supported by the 20th Special Operations Squadron, Green Hornets, Air Force, whose members lived with us on our FOB. We ate and drank together, and that made for a close and bonding relationship. They knew personally every team member on the ground.
Jim Bolen, the true American hero.